In the turbulent waters of the Indian Ocean, by March 1942, the Allies' time was rapidly running out. The Battle of the Java Sea had ended in disaster, and now, as the Imperial Japanese Navy continued its trail of destruction, the tiny Australian sloop HMAS Yarra was tasked with escorting a convoy consisting of 3 of the last few British vessels left in the region through the danger zone to the safety of Fremantle, Australia. As dawn broke on March 4th, Yarra's lookout made a horrifying discovery. The topmasts of 3 enormous Japanese heavy cruisers bearing down on them, accompanied by 4 destroyers. Under the command of the ruthless Admiral Nobutake Kondo, the enemy fleet towered over the humble sloop in number, size, firepower, range, and speed. As the alarm bells rang out on board Yarra, Lieutenant Commander Robert Rankin knew the odds of making it out alive were almost 0. But the sloop had a convoy to protect, and it wasn't going to go down without a fight. Named after the River Yarra in Victoria, Australia, HMAS Yarra was one of 13 Grimsby-class sloops developed in the early 1930s for convoy escort roles. By 1932, the idea of integrating escort and minesweeping duties was abandoned, leading to the creation of the Grimsby-class sloops. Starting in 1933, 8 were constructed for the Royal Navy. In 1934, the Royal Australian Navy began building its own, with Yarra being the first, laid down by the Cockatoo Island Dockyard in Sydney on May 24, 1934. Sloops were among the smallest warships of their day, and Yarra was no exception. She had a displacement of 1,060 tons at standard load, increasing to 1,500 tons when fully loaded. She measured 266 feet 3 inches in length, with a beam of 36 feet and a draft ranging from 7.5 to 10 feet, depending on the load. However, despite her modest size, she had a relatively powerful propulsion system. In peacetime, Yarra was crewed by 135 officers and sailors, but this would rise to 160 in wartime. When it came to armament, Yarra mostly relied on her trio of QF 4-inch Mark V anti-aircraft guns, which had a reasonably rapid rate of fire and an effective range, providing her the ability to defend herself from both aerial and surface attacks. She was also armed with a quadruple machine gun mount for short-range engagements. While her first few years principally consisted of routine patrols and training exercises, when Australia followed Britain into World War II in September 1939, Yarra would soon find herself performing an important role. Although the Grimsby class had not initially been designed as a minesweeper, in December of that year, Yarra joined the newly formed 20th Minesweeping Flotilla alongside HMAS Swan, Dumba, and Aurora. Based at Port Melbourne, the 4 ships were given the crucial but high-risk task of scouring Australian waters for enemy mines, keeping sea lanes open for merchant shipping and troop convoys. In August 1940, the waters off the coast of East Africa and the southern Arabian Peninsula were quickly becoming a hotspot for violent clashes as British and Italian colonies brushed up against each other, and Yarra reinforced Allied convoy operations in the area as part of the Royal Navy's Red Sea Force. Under Lieutenant Commander W.H. Harrington, she set sail from Fremantle, arriving in Aden on September 18th. It wouldn't take long for Yarra's crew to realize they were now on the front lines of World War II, as that same night she was subjected to not 1 but 2 Italian air raids. While the diminutive warship survived the attacks unscathed, this baptism of fire would give her a taste of what was to come. 1 month later, on the evening of October 20th, Yarra escorted convoy BNT north from Aden. Positioned to starboard, Yarra zigzagged through the waters, a tactical maneuver designed to make her a harder target for enemy submarines and torpedoes. Around 11 p.m., a few miles east of Massawa, the tranquility was shattered as 2 ships were spotted approaching at high speed. Yarra's lookout sighted the vessels and sounded the alarm. The crew sprang into action, hearts pounding with the adrenaline of the moment. Yarra's commander issued a challenge, the signal lights blinking rapidly. The enemy wouldn't take long to reveal themselves. Suddenly, one of the vessels blasted a torpedo in the Australian sloop's direction. Yarra's crew narrowly evaded the hit before skillfully dodging a second torpedo attack. The thunderous roar of the Italian warship's guns swiftly followed the torpedoes. HMS Auckland, another sloop in the convoy, was the first to return fire. Moments later, Yarra followed with a salvo. Caught off guard by the response, the enemy ships turned away, trying to escape while the Allies followed in hot pursuit. Soon enough, the British cruiser HMS Lender and destroyer HMS Kimberley joined the chase. Determined not to let the enemy escape, Kimberley drove the Italian destroyer Francesco Nullo ashore on a small island off Massawa and knocked her out with a perfectly aimed torpedo. In her first naval skirmish, the small but mighty Yarra had played a key role and gained valuable experience that would later prove vital. By spring 1941, the conflict in the Red Sea was drawing to a close, with the Italians losing their grip on the region. Yarra headed for refitting in Bombay, completed on April 9th, a day after the British captured Massawa, ending Italian rule in Eritrea as well as fighting in the Red Sea. 3 days later, Yarra was needed on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula. In Iraq, Germany and Italy had orchestrated the Golden Square coup, replacing the pro-British leadership with Axis-friendly Arab nationalists. As British forces poured into Iraq, tensions escalated. On May 2nd, the new Iraqi government declared war on Britain and attacked British establishments. That same day, Iraqi forces attempted to destroy a bridge over the Karmat Ali River, but failed due to faulty explosives. Lieutenant Commander Harrington, upon learning of the failed demolition, quickly deployed Yarra's gunner to secure the bridge, achieving a strategic victory for the British. Later that month, HMAS Yarra took part in a daring plan to disperse enemy forces entrenched along the Shatt al-Arab, 7 miles from Ashar. On the night of May 22nd, 6 sailors from Yarra, disguised as Arabs, conducted a covert reconnaissance mission. They quietly navigated the waters in native craft, taking soundings to ensure the safety of the upcoming landing. Their subterfuge succeeded, and they relayed the critical information back to Lieutenant Commander Harrington. The following night, under darkness, a flotilla consisting of Yarra, 2 tugs, and 2 native craft set out for the landing point. By 4 a.m. on May 24th, they were in position. Yarra bombarded the shoreline, creating a smokescreen before landing a unit of Indian soldiers. As the troops emerged, Yarra's guns roared in support. The battle was intense but swift, ending by 8 a.m. The enemy was routed, their positions burning as the flotilla returned downstream. Thanks to the efforts of the tiny warship, the operation was a success, and less than a week later, the war in Iraq ended with the pro-British government reinstalled. However, as one Middle Eastern crisis ended, a new one emerged in neighboring Iran, a crucial supply line between the British and the Soviet Union. With German forces advancing toward the Caucasus and increasing Nazi influence in Iran, the Allies decided to intervene, and Yarra would play a key role. In the early hours of August 25, 1941, as the Soviets prepared to invade Iran from the north, the British launched their attack from the Persian Gulf. Yarra, along with HMS Falmouth, a tug and a launch, was tasked with neutralizing the enemy naval base at Khorramshahr, which housed the Iranian sloop Babur, 2 gunboats, and around 1,000 Iranian troops. Simultaneous attacks were planned for Bandar Shapur and Abadan. At 1 a.m., Yarra, carrying a platoon of Indian infantry, departed from her anchorage in the Shatt al-Arab near Basra. Falmouth was to follow with 2 more platoons, but ran aground as she maneuvered into position. Yarra pressed on, hoping the rising tide would free her fellow sloop. The darkness was oppressive, the heat almost unbearable, and the silence so profound that Lieutenant Commander Harrington would later say, quote, "Every sound seemed like a thunderclap." Blacked out to avoid detection, the vessels moved stealthily downstream, miraculously passing unnoticed by Iranian strongposts along the Shatt al-Arab. At 4:08 a.m., Yarra furtively arrived off the naval base and hid behind an anchored merchant ship. Moments later, the stillness was shattered by gunfire downstream, signaling the commencement of operations at Abadan. Harrington skillfully navigated Yarra into the stream, past the northern point of the Karun River mouth. Searchlights blazed, illuminating the target, and Yarra's guns roared to life. The Babur offered no retaliation. Within 10 salvos, it was engulfed in flames. An explosion from the aft magazine tore a hole in the vessel, sinking it. With 1 enemy vessel destroyed, Yarra pressed into the Karun River to confront Iranian gunboats. Sporadic fire from the naval barracks was silenced by Yarra's machine guns and a single round from a 3-pounder. As Yarra closed in on the gunboats, initial rifle fire ceased under her machine gun's relentless sweep. Drawing alongside, Yarra faced only a few stray bullets before boarding parties of gunners, cooks, and stewards boarded the gunboats. They found the Iranian crews hiding below decks. A few warning shots down the hatches brought the enemy sailors out, ready to surrender. Meanwhile, Harrington received word that Falmouth had freed herself from grounding. Deciding to wait for reinforcements before landing his platoon, he anchored Yarra and kept a watchful silence, holding 90 Iranian and Italian prisoners securely on board. At 5:30 a.m., the calm was broken by Falmouth's arrival. She pulled alongside the Iranian depot ship Ivy before landing her troops. Onshore fighting continued, but by 10 a.m., the entire barracks area was under British control. Yarra then transferred her prisoners to Ivy, keeping a few Italian engineers to work on the captured gunboats. By the end of the day, Khorramshahr was completely captured. On September 2nd, in no small part due to the success of Yarra's missions, the Italian government accepted British-Soviet terms, with the pro-German Shah abdicating 2 weeks later. For his efforts, Harrington earned the Distinguished Service Order. Next, Yarra was sent to the Mediterranean for escort duties between Alexandria and Tobruk. She faced intense low-level attacks from the Luftwaffe, much more effective than the Italian high-level bombing she was used to. On December 7, 1941, the day of the Pearl Harbor attack, Yarra was raided by 35 enemy aircraft, including dive bombers. Miraculously, none hit Yarra, and she escaped with only minor damage from near misses. With the Pacific War underway, Yarra moved to escort duties from Sunda Strait to Singapore. On February 3, 1942, she escorted 5 ships with HMS Dene and HMAS Sutlej. Attempting to enter Singapore by day, the convoy was attacked by Japanese dive bombers. Transports Felix Roussel and Empress of Asia were hit. While Felix Roussel controlled the flames, Empress of Asia was engulfed. Yarra valiantly defended the convoy, downing at least one enemy aircraft. Harrington maneuvered Yarra to Empress of Asia's stern, rescuing 1,804 men amid enemy fire, solidifying the sloop's reputation for heroism. In the following weeks, Yarra continued escort duties, with Lieutenant Commander Robert W. Rankin taking over from Harrington. The situation for the Allies deteriorated rapidly. On February 27th, the Japanese attacked the Allied fleet in the Battle of the Java Sea, sinking several warships and causing heavy casualties. As the Japanese onslaught continued, it became clear that withdrawal was the only option. The British hurried the remaining ships out of Batavia to Jilit Jop. However, as they neared the port on March 2nd, they received a signal to avoid the harbor, and Yarra escorted the convoy to Fremantle. A Japanese cruiser force, led by Admiral Kondo, was sweeping the Indian Ocean, hunting the remnants of Allied naval power in the Dutch East Indies. They had already sunk several ships, including the British destroyer HMS Stronghold, and now headed toward the convoy. At 6:30 a.m., Yarra's lookout spotted the topmasts of the heavy cruisers Atago, Takao, and Maya to the north-northeast, with 4 destroyers alongside them. Lieutenant Commander Rankin gave the order to scatter. Despite being outgunned, Yarra's 3 4-inch guns opened fire, laying down a smokescreen to cover the convoy's escape. The enemy proved too powerful, and the convoy's ships began to fall. King sank first, followed by the motor minesweeper, which was hit by close-range fire from one of the cruisers. Yarra was ablaze and tilting heavily, but she fought on to protect the tanker Francole, which eventually succumbed at 7:30 a.m., leaving Yarra alone. For another half hour, Yarra's guns roared, until just after 8 a.m., Rankin ordered the crew to abandon ship. The bridge was struck by an 8-inch salvo, and Rankin was lost. The survivors hurried into rafts as Japanese destroyers pounded Yarra until she sank. Of the 151 crew members on Yarra, 138, including the captain and all officers, either perished in the battle or later due to injury, thirst, exposure, or shark attacks. Only 13 men survived. Yarra's wartime service earned 2 battle honors, Libya 1941 and East Indies 1942. In 2000, a memorial to HMAS Yarra was opened at Newport Park in Melbourne. In March 2013, Governor General Quentin Bryce announced a unit citation for gallantry for the ship's company at the time of its sinking. This award was presented on March 4, 2014, the anniversary of Yarra's loss, to the Chief of Navy and the crew of the modern-day HMAS Yarra in a solemn ceremony on the River Yarra.